Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another regular, normal, everyday episode of Baka. This is an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we come together after watching an anime and talk about it right here before turning the discussion over to our fans, because we truly are a bunch of Bakas. We call ourselves the Baka Club, including you, and we hope that the discussion we have generates much better ideas in your mind.
Usually does.
Yeah. We are actually continuing the second part of the first season of the Ancient Magus Bride, and so that would be episodes 13 through 24. If you haven't listened to our older episode, the one before this, you might want to go back and catch up, because we are going to be jumping right into the middle of the story. Before we get started, let me introduce my other host. My name is Troy, and first off, we have the expecto to my Patronus, Jeremy.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. It's a Harry Potter spell. I know you don't know it.
Yeah, don't know that one. That's actually on the list of movies that I need to see. I'm late to the party.
For those who don't know, that's where you make like a magical spirit figure who comes out and protects you. And everyone has their own animal or own version of what it looks like.
So this would just be a giant beard that appears to protect you.
You have a beard.
Yeah. My one quality. Yes, Troy's would be a Spriggan. So I saw the Commuter. I don't even know when it came out, if it's a recent movie or not, but I saw it this week.
Is that the one with Liam Neeson?
Yeah. I kind of was expecting some Liam Neeson cheese in it, like my wife was taken. There's even a moment where you're just waiting for him to say that because it kind of seems like it happened, but they held back, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was a good show.
Yeah. And just so everyone's warned, me and Jeremy have seen Avengers Infinity War. So now this podcast has 200% more chance of spoilers, but one of us still hasn't, so we are holding back. That other guy is the Repello to my Muggleton, Jason.
Okay.
That is the spell to repel Muggles.
Oh, good.
Who are non-magic people. I thought it was fitting because that's, I try to get away from you.
That's fair enough. Hey. I recently dove back into The Forest because it had a full release a couple weeks ago.
No, that's the scary survival one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not zombies, it's cannibals. And
might as well be zombies.
Right. Oh man! And
can't rather have zombies because they can't put down traps and hunt you.
Well, so the worst part about it is that they will climb up a tree and then they'll hop from tree to tree, and they'll do that out of your vision. So you'll be working on something like building a little fort or putting up logs for a wall, and then all of a sudden you turn around to grab a log, and then you turn around and then they're right there because they hop down from the tree.
Oh, I don't like that.
And then there's 4 of their buddies behind them, and you're just time to go.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so it's not a ton different than earlier releases, but it's cleaner. It runs better. Load times are phenomenally fast, and the opening intro is really, really well done. Kind of puts you in that spirit or moment of it.
So yeah, I've been getting ready for Avengers Infinity War. I knew I would be going, and I knew I had 2 weeks before I went, and I spent the past 2 weeks watching 18 MCU Marvel movies.
We discussed doing that, Tanya and I, and just even though this was the week between her semesters, we just couldn't do it.
It was very intense, and I literally was watching the Thor Ragnarok before walking out the door to get to the movie theater. It got very close, and I messed up. I was watching all the movies. I got to Civil War, and Vision came on the screen, and I realized I didn't see Avengers 2. I somehow went right past Avengers 2.
Age of Ultron, no.
And then I'm like, oh no, I don't know how Vision got made, even though I've seen the movie multiple times.
Yeah.
But just, like the inner turmoil. Do I go back? I don't have time to go back. But I did go back and watch it. But just knowing I missed.
You can't finish the ritual unless you've seen all of them.
It kills the inner nerd in me that I messed up. But I did get every single movie watched. It was really cool watching the evolution of the films and then getting to see the culmination in Infinity War. So let's talk about the second half of this anime that we have watched. Again, so before we go into the spoiler part, let's do our non-spoiler reviews. This is only for this section, though. Jason, I'm going to let you go first. This is still your choice of anime, so what did you think?
The slow character burn of character development. The writers, I have to just applaud one more time. I would say I think the first half is still my favorite over the second half, but the second half was done great, and I really enjoyed my time watching it.
Fantastic. Jeremy, how about you?
I really liked it. I actually find myself in the other side of this here. The second half was more enjoyable to me, but I wonder if it has to do with some of the increased amount of action and activity, and they did a good job tying some things up, or at least giving you an understanding of where people came from and why they made the decisions they did that got them here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good.
I actually did enjoy the second part more than the first part, and only because a lot of the characters that are set up in the first part pay off in the second part. Yes. And even like main characters, we may not learn all their secrets, but we get to the core of their being, of who they are. Whereas, in the last half, we were like, what is this? Who are you? Do I trust you? And this part, I was like, I thought you figured out now that, you've been laid bare. And in a very, like Jason said, slow burn character building way that really paid off. I think a lot of these characters pay off so well. So let's now go to our talking about the intros and endings.
The ending was meh, and the opening was okay. That's really all I have to say about it. I wasn't blown away by it. It didn't have the same meaning as the first half of the season.
Yeah.
I thought that the intro, half the intro was now spent on covering the same things that happened in the first half of the season, because it's almost like they compressed all of the events into that first half of the intro, and then the second half of the intro is now trying to figure out what's going to happen next. But it didn't have the charm of the first half of the season's intro. I certainly wasn't humming it, nor the ending. It's just meh.
I thought it was an interesting choice to use it for recap of the first half, instead of other methods that we see used. But I skipped it mostly, especially after the first one or two times.
I'll have to say the imagery of the ending was nice payoff for the end of the season. I'll have to say that.
Now that I'm starting to remember what the what the intro was.
You're talking about the fountain, right?
Yeah, the fountain in the ending.
Yeah. That was good payoff because of the location. But the dragon was actually, I thought, poor payoff from the intro sequence, because I got the impression the dragon was going to be a much more present and involved character, just because of how much time it got in the intro sequence. And I was even wondering, who is this dragon? Is this dragon Elias? I see what looks like maybe a skull for a head.
Right. Right. So, yeah.
Oh, I saw the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it was kind of a little bit confusing, and I don't know if that was maybe the best choice to make the dragon the center of that, even though it does tie in story wise to some degree.
I think it's teaser, and I'd rather have something I can't figure out in a teaser that I didn't
That's
say,
true.
oh, I 100% know who that dragon's going to be. I actually like that. It was a little bit of a trick.
Maybe it's good too that it was something that didn't matter as much.
Right. So let's go on to
like Thor 2.
No, I'm trying to move on. So let's go on to our now spoiler section where now we're going to get into the actual plot of these last 12 episodes. Again, if you are lost about what's going on, I want to go check out our first episode or just watch the anime. One of those things should fix it.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys remember how last episode I complained that they weren't talking out their problems and how that really bugged me? It was just something that sticks in my craw. Well, the first episode kind of gets to that almost right away. They're like shearing spiritual sheep, and then Ice One shows up and attacks Chise, and they have to drive it off, and then Elias carries her in and holds her and warms her up, and they talk about his feelings while she was gone and all that stuff, and kind of get the conversation started. It's not everything I wanted it to be, but it is better.
And I think that was done on purpose.
Right.
And I think so. This is a tiny theory I have. It's funny because when you meet another stranger in life, right, you don't think to yourself, does this person understand anger or sadness or happiness? You just take those things for granted. And I think that's what happened with Elias. When he came out of the woods, because he presents himself like a man but with a bonehead.
He is a bonehead.
Yeah, but I think
great.
everyone took for granted that he just understood what emotions were.
Right.
And I think no one
Lindell treats him as such a child. We kind of figure out.
And it was at this point, like, you got really good hints of it, and we kind of knew in the first half. But in this scene where, like, they're talking, and he's like, "Oh, that's what that feeling is." You're like, no one taught him what emotions are, but he has them.
I did find it to be a little bit odd how there had to be something that he experienced in the hundreds of years of life that he's experienced so far, some of which, I'm guessing a good portion of which was with Lindell. There has to be some event at some point where he experienced these emotions, and so he would at least recognize what the emotions were. I'm really surprised that he never said anything or asked about it or had some kind of tantrum because of something, like the master said do something he didn't, or he got in trouble or something.
Well,
that was difficult.
Think about the village scene where the kid sees him in the shadow and he's a monster. He got angry.
He did.
But if you take that entire scene into consideration, Lindell didn't talk to him about it.
That's true.
Like his actual emotion and his response to what people were doing to them.
Right. And other interactions we see with like Simon and Angelica, he treats it's very much an act that he puts on in front of them. Like he acts, he's like, this is how a man acts. And I don't mean, a human acts. This is how I will behave in front of these people, not quite grasping the human connection that other people would get.
Right. See, and this is what was odd to me, is that there seems to be this stasis where he's experienced these emotions, but he's never connected that these are the same things humans experience, even though he's able to pretend that he's experiencing what humans experience because he can recognize what humans would expect from that sort of emotion. So he knows what anger looks like so that he can portray it, or he knows what being friendly and small talk looks like. He knows what different attitudes and things look like, but even though he's experienced, he's had hundreds of years of life now, he had to have experienced some of these emotions. I kind of thought it was difficult to believe that he was in a sort of stasis where he comprehended them well enough to pretend, but when he would actually experience emotion, he did not put two and two together, recognize, and connect them.
So it seems to me, and maybe you guys need to correct me on this, that the emotions that are being new to him tend to be specific towards a very close personal relationship. Loneliness, jealousy, not so much is this sadness, is this anger. It was more intimate emotions that come from a deep connection with someone that's what he's never had before.
Well, yeah, because in this scene, she's like, I think you experienced loneliness. He's like, that's what that was. And I think,
so like he's aware of the word.
That's the stasis that I'm talking about, though, is like, it seems strange that he's able to to recognize and put that together now based on the description she's giving him, or just because she calls it that, he's able to look back and say, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. And perhaps even with things like you mentioned, where he had an angry reaction, he could now look back and recognize in his past, that's what I was experiencing. It's hard to believe because he's so intelligent when it comes to, like, I guess magic is innate. Maybe it has something to do with him being Fae as well. And so his reactions, he just behaves like a Fae and shrugs things off.
I just don't see. I don't see anything that we've been presented with that would cause him to have ever experienced loneliness before.
Yeah,
well, I mean, we've only gotten like a little snippet at a time. It's hard. He's been alive for
but we're
hundreds of years.
presented with that he keeps people at arm's length. Even Silver Lady, he's not like emotionally attached to. He doesn't come home and is happy to see Silver. He's just like, hey, Silver Lady is also here. And
he doesn't seem to like Cartiphilus though, so there's some history where emotion was involved there.
That I don't know, because that, like, he knew his name, but he also said he didn't know who he was, and I still kind of am unsure how much he actually knew about that character. It almost seems like Cartiphilus is a myth or a legend among mages that
and he just happened to recognize him.
Yeah, when he saw him, he's like, "Oh, this is that guy that everyone talks about."
It could be. There's a lot of implication here that I'm drawing on, and it's all I've got.
And 1000%. And I actually like that about this whole anime is that a lot of times they don't come and spell things out.
No, they don't.
There's a phrase I've been using that we will get to later, empathic sponge, that I feel they accurately show, but they never say the words and describe what's going on, but they show a scene that I was like, oh, that connects all these dots in my head, and now I have an explanation.
You just nailed it for me. This is why I really appreciate this anime. They give enough benefit of the doubt to the viewer, enough intelligence to the viewer that they can extrapolate these things for themselves instead of these boring 5-minute long expositions that feel so out of place.
Right.
Nice job, Trey.
Oh yeah, really on my game.
This is why you're the host.
We need to talk about. I'm going to put them together. The character arcs of Chise and Elias in this, or Elliot. How do you call him, Jeremy?
Elias.
Elias, because they say it differently in the different dubs. But I mean, they probably both deserve their own. But we are going to talk about them. We'll just throw them together. How did you feel about their character growth through this arc, and compared to how you felt about them in the last half? Jeremy.
Okay. I really enjoyed how Chise got to actually see what the source was for her current emotional state.
Right.
And that was a big thing for me because I know that depression is something that is, a psychological problem. A lot of people have it. I've had it in my past. My wife suffers from it. She's had it many times. But there is almost always something that is causing it that isn't just a chemical reaction. And in this case, it was really cool to see that she identified her loneliness combined with her history with her family. And that was really cool. I loved seeing how she actually took on some of the villain in order to progress herself as a character because she didn't have any other choice. And it left me wondering, what was that going to do to her personality? And I really would have loved to see that explored a little bit more than they did. But I was enamored by that. And as far as Elias goes, it was, I think, in regards to his relationship with her was what I enjoyed the most. Just this back and forth juggling where they each had different roles in this relationship that they were developing, where she got to be the adult at times and he got to be the adult at times. And that felt very realistic to me in this world that was very unrealistic and magical. It was really cool to see how they set that up, and I thought they stuck the landing really well.
I agree with literally everything Jeremy said. But what I have to add is for Chise, this character growth, again, just love the writers. Her character growth is fantastic, along with Elias's, because we still, even at the end of this season, don't know a ton about his backstory. In fact, they left it off at episode 12 where it's like, oh, he's got amnesia and he walked out of the woods. And they never explore that again. And I didn't feel like I missed it. Like, 24 came and I didn't feel like, oh, they never explained where Elias came from. It's not that it didn't matter, and sure, I would love to know that information. I'm sure that's probably going to come later down the road. But it was such a complete story. If they never came out with another season, like, it was the story they told here was really, really well done. But their relationship, yeah, just what a phenomenal pair as far as
right.
Going through this world.
Yeah.
I pretty much mimic both you guys. I really enjoyed both their growth. I love that in my eyes, Elias degenerates into his true self, and we get past that persona that he puts forth as a mask to everyone else. That Chise is cutting to the core of him, which is actually a immature child man who doesn't know how to deal with emotions and having to explore that, and how when someone of that power and magnitude, that's not safe. It literally is an unsafe issue.
It's of mice and men, right?
Right. And with Chise, just how through the first half of this was coming, getting over her depression and finding value in herself. And then this, I really felt it was moving past the issues that gave her that depression in the first place. It was growing and forgiving herself for, even reaching that state and that state. There's some really mature themes that are just called out bluntly, especially about suicide. I just let me commit suicide. Well, you can't. Well, you tried to. Who are you to judge me? That kind of stuff is thrown around. And it's really about her character. I mean, I think this is a great series for people who do get down. I think there's a lot of actually interesting therapeutic stuff in this that could really help. I get down too. So I can see a lot of value in her story. Besides the beautiful art, besides the beautiful backstories and lore, there's a really healing story in Chise's character arc from beginning to end of this season. I thought they were going a little bit different way with it about halfway through, and we'll mention that later. But so that I thought both characters were phenomenal. I love the flip, and a lot of the creepiness went away especially because of that flip. Once we knew who Elias really was, it completely changed the power dynamic in their relationship.
What about also when they got to the auction later, and the auctioneer presented her with a checkbook?
Yeah,
did some of the creepiness go away there too?
No, because right afterwards, Elias does mention that I own her.
Yeah, but she has $2.5 million. So basically she's an employee that's getting paid. She's literally that money that he paid to buy her. That's her money now.
Why are you starting that again?
Because I think that in this half of the season, they completely answer that situation.
Can she quit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's not a slave.
Right.
I didn't get that impression because Elias, especially in the very first episode of this thing, says, no, you can't.
Right.
Because she asked, can I leave? And yeah, she definitely does. I believe Chise now, on a personal basis, has the power to walk away from this relationship whenever she wants. 100%.
He will not stop her.
And yes, that 100% did ease a lot of the creepiness. I still don't like the technical terms they use of slave, owned, stuff like that. But like I said, a lot of that went away when the power dynamic in the relationship changed. If I could change one thing, I just wish maybe even the English dub, just say she's 18 instead of 15.
Just pretend.
There's almost no reason to call her 15. And I'm sure.
Just say it really loud. Like when you're reading it, it would get like that fuzzy snow over the number, and you'll just say 18! 18!
She even literally calls it out in this season.
Right.
In these episodes. But whatever. It is probably a cultural thing that I don't understand, and I'm just ignorant. So the rest of the story was beautiful. Okay. So we get a lot of slice of life stuff in this episode after their discussion. Some interesting things we saw the dark elk mage that visits Elias, the birds, and we kind of get the suggestion there's more than one bird that Elias is killing when they come to their door or their windowsill, these messenger birds. Because we find out later that's the invitations to the college of the alchemist, right?
Yeah.
And I love how, like, there's multiple pots that don't have plants growing in them.
Yeah. There's a bird buried there.
That was a really interesting thread that carried through. Because they've been ominously hinting at it. Like, even in this scene, they just kind of pan over to the pots. And every once in a while, someone will mention, did you see a bird? And then later we find out that these alchemists are like, we should totally have her come to this college. She would do great here. And Elias is so, what's the word I'm looking for?
Jealous?
That's it. But like, I was thinking like immature or something. Man, there's an actual word I want. But
possessive.
Yeah. That he is literally deciding for her. No. I don't want anyone to ever take you away. He's so afraid of abandonment. Now that he's finally found something to attach to, he's terrified of losing it. And I think that was interesting. At the end of this first episode, a new character shows up named Ashen Eye, who is a villain / chaos maker.
He's chaos. He's pure chaos.
Can't really call him a villain either.
Yeah.
It's hard to get his intent.
He's just having fun. He's just being entertained.
Yeah, he does at one point say,
man,
this is boring, and leaves.
Elias mentions he's like super old. Like,
but he is Fae.
But gives the impression that he's older than Lindell. Like,
yeah, I got the impression he's like,
and it feels like an elder god.
Yes,
messing with people.
Exactly.
They do call out he hates humans, though.
Did they?
Elias mentions you hate humans. What are you doing?
Which would explain why he's entertained by the events of the second half. Yeah. Yep.
Any other thoughts on this guy?
I liked him. He was creepy.
I knew you were going to like this guy.
Well, he's so morally ambiguous, but on the chaos evil side. Mm-hmm. But I can't quite justify calling him a villain, but he's obviously a villain in here.
Well, go ahead.
He feels like the evil jester stirring things up for fun, and I enjoyed it. I thought he was because in some stories you kind of get either lulls or you need a Deus Ex Machina to kind of move the plot along. He kind of played that role, but in a super believable way, just because of who he was.
Mm-hmm. To add to your point, because I totally agree. His entrance to this by providing her with, and I know Troy's going to describe this better than me, but his entrance to this scene, well, he shows up on the doorstep and Elias is like, what are you doing here? And he tries to protect Chisei, steps in front of her. And the guy says, no, I'm not here to cause any problems or hurt her. And he's going to give her a gift, right? So he swings out this, it looks like an animal hide of some kind. And before you know it, Chisei's turned into a fox and she's running away. This was really cool because you have multiple ways of looking at it. And the way he explains it to Elias is, this is a test to see if she really even wants to be here. She needs to figure out what she wants. And looking at Chisei's psychology, as has been presented to us up to this point, she doesn't really know what she wants. She's testing things to see if there is anything that she wants. And so you could almost argue that Ashen Eye was helping her.
Right.
Hand quotes, air quotes here, and so there is room for some moral ambiguity, but I think that falls within the realm of this sort of stir the pot, see what happens, just play with the mortals and watch, tip the domino over and see where things go.
So he transforms her, and she runs off into the woods as a fox. I thought it was interesting that she wasn't coming back on her own.
Yeah, I did too.
She was going to just leave and give in to, and I guess I saw this as a true test of what you truly desired. Mm-hmm. And she basically was desiring to be free and live a life. And then Ruth and Elias show up and kind of talk her down, and her true desire is to be with Elias, so that kind of changes her mind from the running away. But it wasn't she wasn't like immediately wanting to go back or I know where I belong. It took Elias actually talking to her for her to decide that.
Mm-hmm. So I actually have a question in regards to this, and that is, do you think that she actually really wanted to go and leave, or do you think that this was simply a flight response because she didn't know what she wanted? And so she just, especially changing like this into an animal and acting on instinct, first time ever, didn't expect it. I'm kind of wondering, what do you guys think? Is it possible that this was being faced with a problem and you don't know how to answer it, and so the reaction is simply to flee? It doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter where you're going.
I saw it very much that fight or flight. And yeah, you're right, because as the thing is, as she's running through the woods and she's talking to herself, she's not saying stuff that you would think that is her. And so, for instance, when she's alone, you hear her talking to herself in her head throughout the season so far. Take those snippets and then listen to her running through the woods. It's not her. It's a very instinctual, I just want to go. I want to be out in the wilderness.
Smell the air. And
yeah. And then once she gets used to that form, used to the magic, she comes to her senses, I think.
And they help her do that. Yeah.
Right. That's how I saw it.
For me, my interpretation was that Chise has reached a point in her character development where she does want to be with Elias, but she's also wanting to live her life. Wherever point in mindset she was where she wanted to turn herself into a slave, she has moved past that. She does want to be free. And I see it also part of she keeps sneaking out of the house. I'm going to go to town. I'm going to go do this stuff. She's choosing, I'm going to go live life. Elias is just going to have to deal with it. And this is kind of, I think, just foreshadowing of the issues they're going to have later, of her wanting to not just be a person who sits in Elias's house to keep him happy. She also wants to live. She wants to. What did the big dragon say to her in the last half? You must soar to thrive, or something like that.
Yeah,
I see that as, and that she's torn between those two things, and that one comes to bear very strongly in the beginning, and then when Elias reminds her of the other thing she wants, which is to be with him and live a life with him, that pulls her back. That's what I saw.
Cool.
And then after this, I love how, and again, goes back to the moral ambiguity. He's like, and you can keep this thing, and then you can turn into an animal whenever you want, no matter what animal you want. And it's like she gets this like werewolf skin thing.
I saw it as like a power boost upgrade.
Right?
Yeah, big time.
It was like a piece of equipment that she got, and it's like, so then you can. Is he evil? Is he
right?
Is he not evil?
And this helped her realize that even in her instinctual form as this animal, she did want to go back enough that she came back. So it helped her. Yeah.
But there's also the fact that this will come into play and help her with dealing with Ash and I later.
Yeah.
Almost like he just, and he even kind of references it too, like, "Hey, the only way we do that. Remember that thing I totally gave you?"
Yeah, he does. He calls it right out. He says like the power of a beast or something. I can't remember how it was in the sub, but
he said something about smell, I think, in the dub.
Yeah. Smell your nose.
Okay, so the next story we get into after this whole animal fiasco is we come back to the, what did she call it? Leanne, the fairy vampire muse thing.
Yes.
With the old man Joel, we had met in the last half, and basically
paid off so well.
Joel is dying, and Chise goes to help, and Elias follows along, and Elias points out, "Yeah, you totally bit this guy. You totally fed on him, and he's gonna die from it." She's like, "I never would." He's like, "No, you did. You don't have to lie. This is clearly your work." And I kind of saw that as she kind of gave into the idea that she did love him, and so devoured him like she promised she would.
But it also feels like she's in denial the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I never got the impression that she did. I actually took her at her word. I took her at her word that Joel was just dying of old age because he's an old man. We don't know exactly how long he's been tending the garden, but they clearly made him old. And I also wondered if just her presence was enough to sap him to some degree, even if she didn't necessarily deliberately bite him.
What about his wording? So we're going to find out that Cheetah is going to do a magic spell potion thing so that he can see her, because that was his like dying wish.
Mm-hmm.
And when he does see her, he says, "Go ahead and take my life. Like, you can have me." And I kind of saw that as saying, like, you already bit me, and I'm fine with that.
I didn't take it that way.
Oh, I didn't take it like that. Yeah. That's interesting. I took it as him recognizing her from folklore and also from his own memory. And saying, you were with me all this time. You let me finish grieving my wife and still have a life and not just choose to die at that point out of loneliness.
He said he looked her up.
Oh, he looked up what she was?
Yeah.
Oh,
he said the first time that he saw her, he was so enamored and so enthralled that he went and looked her up and to see what she was. And so he knew that that at least she was there at that time. Mm-hmm. If she stayed with him, he wasn't quite sure, or at least that was the impression I got. But then when he saw her again, when Chise got there, that's when he became like super happy because like, oh, she's been around this entire day.
Yeah, I also think of Faye as being very contract bound. So because she didn't give him anything, I didn't think she actually bit him because that would be without a contract, no equal exchange from her. That's probably also what primed me to think that she didn't. So I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
But he also didn't just die.
No, he turned to dust.
Well, that's because he gave himself to her at that moment.
So that was her eating him?
I took that to be an effect of the fairy potion because it's not supposed to be used on humans.
It could be. They did say that.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
I guess my interpretation, it was an after effect of a vampire bite.
So wait, they could have taken him to the hospital, or Chise killed him.
Yeah, turn him to dust. Way to go, Chise. You really can't make a sleeping potion.
You're going to die in about 5 days.
Well, it wasn't a sleeping potion. Come on now. It was, what is it they call it? A fairy ointment? Which becomes a major plot point because it takes her like 5 days of pumping magic into this ointment.
That was really crazy.
I loved how it was like this involved process.
Painful process.
Yeah.
She had to stay awake the whole 5 days.
But not just that like it was a problem she made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we find out Oberon finds out that she makes it and is like, oh, I'm going to have to go see what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And actually after this whole, there's actually a very touching scene of Joel dying. But afterwards, Oberon shows up to Chise's house and is like, I know what you've been doing, naughty, naughty. And then she like vomits blood.
I thought he did something to her.
Oh, I didn't. I know it was from making
well...
Yeah, I thought it was because she made the ointment like as a penalty, not because she taxed herself.
Oh.
What is that right here?
Yeah, I took it as she taxed herself too much.
He came to take the fairy ointment, and when he reaches out to touch her, her ring breaks and she starts vomiting blood.
Yeah.
Now it could just be a natural effect of literally using magic for 5 days as a sleigh beggy. We do know that not even secretly, Oberon and Titania are plotting to get these two to move to Fairyland.
Yeah, they are.
Constantly, nonstop. It wouldn't... Yes. And they don't want to like hurt them or anything. They literally just, we love you guys so much. We just want you to be ours and live in our place forever.
Yep. Embrace the Fae side.
So I could totally see if he did have a little, just to get her. But it did seem a little extreme for him. He didn't. I get no ill will, and this does really hurt her.
Yeah.
That's what was such a contrast for me is like when she started coughing blood, and I thought, oh man, did Oberon do something? His reaction then immediately banished that idea from my mind,
right? Because
he genuinely was concerned for her well-being. So I knew he couldn't have done anything, but it didn't occur until that point that it's sleigh beggy stuff.
Yeah, because it's definitely not impossible that he would do something to get her over there.
Yeah. Hit her in the gut. What's his name? Spriggan, hit her in the gut, Spriggan.
Spriggan makes an appearance in the next episode. So in the next episode, because of the severity of the damage done to her, Elias has to take her to the fairy world to be healed. Because Oberon's like, look, we got a new doctor. Crazy random coolness. You come over, you know she's going to get better healing there than anything you can get here. So Elias does. Walks her through the fairyland, and we meet the Dr. Shannon. Jeremy, you totally called this, kind of. But you mentioned changelings, and we get to meet one.
That was really cool. I like that they did this.
It was so cool, and then the changeling grew up a human and is so normal, and yet her husband, who is the baby she was exchanged for, is like this weirdo fae guy.
Like he's like a wolf centaur.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
But also his personality is like bonkers, where she is very normal and down to earth. Oh man, I love this. I thought it was so cool.
Because like when you're taken as a child and exchanged with a changeling, you're taken to go dance with them and just have frivolity and joy and just goof off. He never would have needed to develop the maturity that she developed in the mortal realm. Right. Yeah, I thought they played that so well that he's just like, life is a game. Woohoo! I have no cares.
I did love at the same time we get to see the grave consequences that play out on a human that is in that realm.
Yeah. The magic can do weird things to you.
What did you guys think of Shannon and her husband? If you want to add him in there, what was his name? Shanahan.
Shannon and Shanahan.
Right. Shanahan. I thought he was funny. Decent comic relief. Shanahan. Wow, what a there's this like my heart sank because there's this moment where like she's healing Chise and then just goes for it like I'm gonna drown you.
I loved this. This is the best healing technique ever.
I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was like, where's Elias? Why isn't Elias like what's going on? And I'll let Troy explain the scene, but man, it was intense, but really, really well done.
Yeah, for me, that's where Shannon became an interesting character. Yeah, because up to that point, I was like, oh, she's a spunky doctor. It's cool.
They needed a doctor.
Yep.
I actually liked her from the start. I love the concept of a human-minded fairy folk doctor trained in regular medicine, now using magical medicine, and just the contrast. A character who's literally in between the two worlds that Chise is straddling now.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if this has anything to do with your being in the medical field to some degree. So, because it doesn't hit me at all. Yeah.
No, and it wasn't that she was a doctor. It was just the idea of. Honestly, the fact that she was a changeling and that you had called that out got me really excited. And I love the idea of seeing a person who was raised in the human world, but was a full-on fae. And so completely understood Chise's human thoughts, like where the other fae were like, why are you like this, human? You're so weird. Humans think so differently. This fae got it because that's how she was raised. And you had mentioned changeling, and my first thought was thinking about the human baby, but getting to meet the changeling who also had their entire life changed because of this whatever weird fairy tradition. Well, I thought was fascinating.
Yeah,
that was just me.
Cool.
I 100% agree with the coolness of her being able to relate to Chise, and also the opposite. I didn't even think about that, so you just brought that up. That is super neat that you've got these two characters from both sides of the same coin that they're both straddling and being able to relate to each other. I think that's pretty neat.
And you're right, she was a BA. Totally.
No. Yeah, so describe the scene.
A BA with a PhD.
Okay, so first on one hand, Elias is meeting with Titania, who's like trying to convince him you guys should totally move in and stay forever.
We got a great place for you right over here. Check it out. It's in the anthill.
Shannon takes Chise to like a healing pool to rest her wounds because her body's like literally opening itself up from the inside and bleeding out because of all the magic she used. and she puts her in the water and is soaking her, and then says, "I hate you," and starts strangling her underwater. And then Chise fights back and puts her down. And we find out that the doctor was testing her. And she's like, the reason your wounds weren't healing is because you didn't have the will to survive. I needed to make sure you had that. Now that you do, look, your wounds are healed.
Because, she was bleeding in the water before this happened. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was like, oh, that's cool. Her wounds are going to heal. I didn't get it in that, no, they weren't closing like the pool's supposed to make them do.
Mm. I actually misunderstood it because I thought that she was trying to get water in her lungs because she was coughing up blood.
I was wondering the same thing.
I was taking the hard
doctors, man.
I was taking the hard sci-fi route of like, okay, it's magical healing water. It's not going to kill her, but it's going to look like it's going to kill her. So it's going to scare us, the audience, and it's going to scare her. But this is just, it's this fairyland. They drown people to heal them. I was wrong.
It's like that movie Abyss where they've got to bring the oxygen in water.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also a synergy here with earlier scenes from the last half of this season. We had called it out, and even the story calls it out. Chise falls in the water a lot and starts drowning. That happens a lot.
It was great.
And this time she's being forced in. So before we had commented, like, did she get out on her own? And eventually, by the end of the first half, she is swimming out of the water when she falls in on her own. But now she's being held down and pushed in. There's synergy with what her mom did to her. There's synergy with that falling in the water, and now she has to literally fight to get out of the water. It's not just choosing to come out; she has to fight. And again, if the water is her symbol for her depression, now she's not just having to be willing to come out of her depression; she's having to actively push against it, fight her way back, care about her life, want to live. And I think that's what Shannon was kind of trying to say here. Like, you have to want to live, and otherwise your body will just shut down on you because you are a slay beggy and you have this horrible curse of your life.
I think you really hit the undercurrent of this anime. Yeah.
Water is depressing.
Yeah.
Play Subnautica. You'll know exactly what he's talking about.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
I'm trying to remember if water comes into play at the ending.
I don't think so.
I can't remember if any of the flashbacks that look like they were.
I think she's kind of like, at this point she sort of solves it, because from here on she doesn't really grapple with the decision to stay alive anymore.
Right.
It's like she's made the decision now.
Well, I mean, near the ending scene, she's delivering water to somebody.
That is very true.
And it is, it's in a while.
Watch for tears. That's another kind of water.
Okay, when we get a little mini story before the end of this episode, and we see Silver Lady's past, where she was a banshee whose home was destroyed. The home that she haunted or was a spirit residing in, and so was a banshee without a place, and was found by the greatest character of all anime time, my main man Spriggan. Keeping it real.
I have to ask a little bit of lore questions here. See if Jeremy. I just picked Jeremy's brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Because when her original house is burned down, she's just a wreck, as if. Not only did she enjoy being there, but she was attached to these people in a loving way. But they use the word banshee. So I thought banshee were not great ghosts.
I am not very familiar with banshees specifically, but in the context that I am familiar with them, it's usually in someone who's been wronged and stays behind for vengeance. So to me, that didn't really match, but I to be honest, I didn't look it up. So yeah, I don't know.
Or maybe she was something else and turned into a banshee because of the burning house. But they called her like, "Where's your family?" that you're supposed to be haunting. So
that is.
But
possible.
The important thing is that Spring comes along and transforms her into the Silver Lady and is like, "Hey, you don't need to haunt a home. You're gonna have a home, so you'll always have a place."
Which seems odd, because does that mean that she's not a banshee anymore? Did he change her into a different sort of fae? Does his power extend that far, or was it merely...
That was my impression, but I have no idea.
That was the impression I got as well, that she was no longer... Or if she was banshee, that was not her purpose anymore, if it was an evil purpose. Because like she's still there, but the family's long gone. So
do you think maybe she burned the house down but missed the family that was there? Maybe that was her vengeance. Like, this is my family. I love them, but I have to kill them too because that's what I do as a fae, kind of like the vampire.
I don't feel like we're focusing on Spriggan enough.
Well, he's tiny, usually.
Yeah,
Spriggan, tiny, awesome.
Yeah, Spriggan amazing.
Spriggan amazing.
What I did,
Sprig amazing.
Jeremy probably wouldn't even notice this because they had already named her in the sub, but in the dub, he actually does names her Silky here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is the first time we've
Silver
heard
Lady
it.
here.
He says she's the Silver Lady, and then he says, "And your name will be Silky." After she kisses him.
If they say that in the sub, I missed it.
Right, because you had pointed out, you already knew that name, and we had never heard it before. So they actually do name her here. That her name is Silky. I thought that was interesting.
I wonder if he gave her that nickname because she was Silver Lady before he transformed her, right?
I thought he made her into the Silver Lady.
I thought when she got the maid costume.
I wonder if that's a kind of fae that exists in folklore that I know nothing about.
Transformed her from a banshee to a Silver Lady.
Yeah,
Silky.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah,
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is all coming into play because we're seeing her taking care of the home while they're away. And she's so sad. Yeah, so we get the impression she's been waiting. You know, it's summertime and she's waiting and she's really missing them. She's like changing the entire decorations of the house, changes the wallpaper with magic spells.
She puts bells on the door and then like starts having like daydreams of them coming
home. And then we see them coming home. And when they step from the Fey world to the real world, it instantly changes to winter because time moves differently. And so you realize they haven't just been gone weeks that she's been lonely. They missed half a year. They skipped to a whole other side of the seasonal calendar, and they finally get home, and she's so happy to see them. And after the backstory, and then seeing just how lonely she was on her own, that hit hard.
Yeah, it was good.
We have it backwards. Selkie is the kind of folklore creature. Silver Lady is just a name, a title.
Okay.
I don't know what the Silky is, but that actually is something Silver Lady is not. But yes, I actually really enjoyed seeing how she genuinely missed them. And I thought it actually pushed the theme of loneliness into it's in so many characters here. Everybody's lonely in this anime is what I started to see. Like, they're all lonely. Chise's lonely. Elias is lonely and doesn't realize it. Silver Lady is lonely. It was nice to see this.
Seems like even Redfield was lonely.
Yes, he was actually. That's why he went out checking for drug addicts.
So then we move on to the Christmas episode, which
you were thrilled with.
Wait, what?
You were so happy about the Christmas episode in our chat.
Yeah, you were. You were like, "Yay! I make a Yuletide log too."
What? I don't remember that at all. But I thought, no, I said I really liked the lore they presented. And what they presented here was fascinating because they don't explain any of it.
Yes.
So first she sees two flying fairy things come down, and they're the Yule twins, and they wish her a happy Yule, and don't forget to burn a Yule log, and don't forget to do all this stuff. And then while they're out preparing for Christmas, there's a mistletoe scene where they kiss. Haha, it's cute. Not important. What's important is while they're out, Centaur and a pregnant woman come marching through the forest, and they have to hide behind a tree because there's literally like a dark woman who comes out on Christmas, and if you don't do Christmas right, she's going to kill you and eat you for her baby. And we meet the baby later, and she's going to become a dark woman by the end of the year. And I was like, oh my God, their Christmas lore is amazing. Sorry, I've been ranting.
Yeah.
What'd you
Basically the same thing. I mean, I am a little bit familiar with the pagan lore when it comes to like what their fertility of the seasons and things like that. And that's what this ties into. But it was really cool to see. It reminded me of how Elder Scrolls handles their lore, where they're like, here's this thing and that thing and this thing. Now you figure out why they're connected. Yeah, it's cool.
No, I really appreciated the episode because and I think that's what's neat about, because like with other franchises or other animes we've watched, like I've always complained about, oh, they didn't explain this or they didn't explain that, or I don't know the backstory on this. It didn't feel needed, and I'm still trying to rack my brain. Why is this anime different? Why is it that Elias isn't explained? Some of the Christmas lore isn't explained. Some of the other characters' backstories aren't fully fleshed out. Like, why isn't this bothering me? And I'm not sure why, but I enjoyed the Christmas episode.
I wonder if it's because those things aren't the main serving. Those things are the supplementary dishes on the side that fill in the world and fill in the setting and fill in the emotion. But the main story revolves around Chise's development and answering her problems and their personal relationship.
Yeah, for me, as someone who really attaches to characters, and that's kind of my driving focus in liking stories, I'm getting what I need about Elias. I'm getting his emotional vulnerabilities and stuff, and really learning what he is about. And so I don't need his lore. It's fascinating, and I'd love to learn it, but I don't need that. I just need to know what his inner desires are, right? What his purpose is, and they do a very good job of bringing that out. Even if they don't explain why he has a skull for a head.
Or why they call him a halfling. Or
the failed halfling, yeah. Right. I do think that it should be noted, I think this is the first time Troy has ever said, oh, when they kissed, that was cute but unimportant. So Christmas clearly affected Troy this year.
Hold on. Can you really
15? I don't really want to watch.
Can you really consider it? Yeah, but can you really consider it kissing if you don't have lips?
Right. And it was just like on the forehead anyways, so it was just like the bone tapping her on the forehead.
Later you see him nuzzle her a few times with the edge of his mouth, and I'm assuming that means he's kissing her.
I think it means he's nuzzling her. I don't think he can do anything more than nuzzle.
It's hard to know intent. It's intent, right? It could be when you don't have lips to signal. It's all about intent. And what's the difference between a kiss and a snuggle if you don't have lips?
Right. By the way, complete sidebar here. Your call last episode of how adorable the characters are when they draw them in that caricature. Oh my gosh, it was still adorable in this.
Yeah, still brings a smile on my face every time. And it's just the way Elias would turn into he'd go from I'm this monstrous thing to I was trying so hard. Why is everyone mad at me?
And this cute dinosaur with horns.
Yep.
The second part of this is Chise sneaks out to go shopping with Alice. And I really like this payoff because when we first met Alice, we thought, oh, there's our villain. She grabbed Chise by the neck, put a knife to her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of learned that she's just trying to do the right thing by her master, her alchemist master, Renfred. And then in this, we really get her backstory. And they become friends. And seeing Chise make a friend after everything she's been through actually felt like a really big step and accomplishment in her character arc. So this was, it's very standard. Let's go shopping for our guys. Oh, I don't know what to get them. But it was still really cool. Also, I love the centaur messenger who Alice couldn't see till he sparked magic to give her vision, because alchemists can kind of attach to the magic world, but only a little.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing that her apprehension of mages, or Alice's apprehension of mages, because I don't think Chise has that as much as the other mages against alchemists, that they were able to make a connection and become friends, because the two worlds clash, they just don't like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have a question.
I like that.
Do we still believe the two worlds clash, or does Elias clash with that world?
I still think there is a degree of clashing, but I don't see it as quite as hard and abrasive as it was before. You're talking about the mage apprentice that's there.
Adolf, who was Lendel's apprentice, couldn't cut it as a mage and became an alchemist, and they're still on very friendly terms.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, but I wonder because we don't know enough about their situation to know whether Adolf is embraced as a mage in the sorcerer or alchemist college, or if he is embraced as someone who has set aside the trappings of a mage to become a sorcerer.
Right.
Another quick sidebar, Jeremy, and this is pure nerd technicality.
Ooh, my favorite.
These
Hold
mages.
on, 10 minutes.
No, it'll be quick. They use nature magic, right?
Seems like it.
And Chisei can change form now with her new werewolf pelt.
When she has it. Yeah.
Are they technically druids?
The alchemists?
No, the mages.
The mages?
Think about it.
Oh my god. I think you might have something
thorns.
There. Yeah, if we're dealing with like D&D trope magics, I think you're right. I think it would fall into the druid category.
These mages fall way closer to druids than they do traditional mages.
Yeah, the sorcerers seem more like mages in the D&D sense, in that sort of tradition.
Right.
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, moving on.
Hi, I'm back. I hope you guys had a good discussion.
Troy would know if he played any RPGs except for Star Wars.
I play lots of
or Call of Duty. Oh wait,
that's true. Star Wars of duty. Star Wars is duty.
I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Alice's growth in this arc, and also her backstory that's presented, where she was a druggie, but not by choice. Her parents forced her to be a druggie so that she would be as addicted as them and help them get drugs. And then she was rescued by Renfred, who
rescued or kidnapped.
In that situation, I'd say rescued.
I'd say rescued.
But by the law, kidnapped. Like,
sure,
willful or not, she's
they are
back to the Chisei thing, you know.
Yeah, they're having
it was up for auction, sure, but she wanted to be there. Same with Alice. Like, she was like, "This is a better life. I'm going to stay here."
Yeah, I think that in a world where these people have underground secret auctions where they sell people and exotic animals that are not believed to exist anymore, I think that this is more like an induction into the ranks. but you know, I see it because of the situation she was coming from as an immense upgrade, and it does seem like she's always free to leave.
Right. So as far as Alice, I appreciated the backstory. It didn't feel long and contrived, which was nice. And because she was being introduced as one of her, like, more of a staple than she was in the first half of the season, it felt necessary. But it also gave us a lot of information on Renfield at the same time. And it gave us more world building as well, instead of just a random crappy character sidebar that takes an entire episode. Right?
The monster that came out of the book was awesome.
That was cool. That was a cool monster.
And that was a cool, and again, great payoff, because the only thing we ever knew of Renfield was, scars on the face. Why do you have that? Oh,
also, maybe not keep books that have monsters in them on the bookshelf. Maybe like a safe. Or
latch them too, like latch them or put a rope around them or something too. Like, don't let those things open.
And maybe like a sticker on it that says "Danger, don't open."
Yeah, this is for you, Alice.
Did you guys catch on that Elias had been spying on her entire shopping trip? Now saw this. Yeah. I saw the spirit, but I just thought, oh, she's seeing a spirit. And then when you get home, she gets home and it's over Elias' shoulder. I'm like, oh, you son.
So you see it 3 times before she gets home. And the first time I thought exactly that. I was like, oh, just random spirit thing. The second time I saw it, I was like, oh, Elias is spying.
Oh, God, I must admit, I only saw it with the balloons, I think.
I got the impression that it was even invisible to her, because they drew it in such a way that it was transparent, whereas later it was not transparent.
Interesting.
And she did act like she never had seen that spirit there. So
when she gets home, he's obviously upset, and they exchange gifts. She got him a new pendant that looks exactly like his old pendant, so the animator didn't have to change what they drew.
I thought that was weird.
That was really weird.
I assume that's the logistics behind making the anime. Like, we can't start drawing like a more fancy pendant, so make the pendant look exactly the same. But since that old pendant has such significance that from the backstory we got, it was a little weird that he was like, nope, don't need that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like that very much. I mean, it says two things. It says, number one, she doesn't really know him well enough to get him anything except this superficial thing that she just sees him wearing all the time. It's like getting a tie as a gift, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I would much rather have, this book or this game or this, just something that embodies who I am rather than just something that I'm going to wear. And so that's one thing that it says. And the other thing that it said to me was this: if that item had some kind of magical enchantment that he got from the other lady, that's gone now.
Yep.
So that enigma is out of the picture.
I mean, obviously there was nothing. It was just a pendant. Then she gets her present too, which is a teddy bear that grows magic stuff off its head.
I loved this.
That turns into currency in every situation she needs.
Yes.
She can trade it to Fae for food because they want to eat it. She can trade it to auction houses because apparently they love it. Like, I was fine with the Fae being all about it, but when she took it to the auction house and they're like, "Oh my god, they will make so much money with these," I'm like, really? No one else can make those mushrooms but her? All right, whatever.
I wonder if, like, the one time that we saw her doing this before was when she was in Angelica's room.
Lab, yeah.
Yeah, in Angelica's lab, and she just created so many of them. But it looked like Angelica had to spend a lot more time and effort just to make one.
Right, and she had to change something into it, whereas this bear is sprouting them naturally.
Right, from her magic, yeah.
Right. And
but it's residual income.
Near the end of that episode, there was a scene at the train where we see a young boy and girl run by. And they become important later because Ash and I finds that little boy. And so in the next episode, this little girl, whose name is Stella and will become a major character in this story for the last couple episodes, cannot find her little brother. And no one else remembers him. The mom's like, you don't have a brother, remember? And so she's freaking out, bumps into Chise, so Chise decides to help. Now, please someone explain to me why Elias had to take over Chise's body, force this girl to bargain with him before they would help.
I think it's just part of the mage contract, especially Fae contract.
I honestly think at this point, because it felt like Chise didn't know Elias was with her at this point. And...
No, she asked him for help. I thought she was asking permission. Like, can we go? Let's go talk to that girl. Let's go.
I thought
that was my impression.
I thought he even came up as a little black
he did.
Liquid and was like blah 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 blah, and then
and I think I have a feeling it was like, I don't want to do this, so what can I get out of it? But and again, it goes to his immaturity because he's asking for compensation from a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and she offers him sweets, and he's like, "That's fine." I thought it felt like
Chise said that was fine.
Was Chise still in control at that time? Was he still in control, or was Chise?
He retracted, and it turned back into her voice.
Uh-huh.
At least
so maybe
that's how I took it.
Maybe that was him by retracting, saying, "Nope, not good enough for my time," and then Chise is like, "Yeah, no, that is good enough. We've got to do this." She's only 10.
It's really weird. So I was thinking, like, is Chise not knowledgeable enough or not in control enough to be the one who agrees to this? She needs Elias to do it, and Elias can't appear in any natural form at this moment, so he has to talk through her. Or is there some kind of we have to have some kind of legally binding contract for us?
That's what I thought it was.
Powers to help a person.
Oh, I don't know.
But I don't know.
This scene did feel out of place.
It seemed like they weren't giving us quite enough information. But the way I took it was that Chise did not have an answer, and if Elias hadn't stepped in, she probably would have been left at a loss. Like, yes, of course I want to help you, but I don't really know how to help you. So, Elias, is there a way to help you? So I think Elias just kind of took over and said, yeah, I can help you, but we got to make a contract because that's how I do things. Even if it's not a mage standard, it's how I do things. Right. Because I'm half Fae, and Faes make contracts. And
90% of the way through this, I'm like, oh, this fits Elias's persona and what I know about him. I'm not confused by this. It was Chise's reaction afterwards. I thought she'd be upset, or like, I wanted to help her, and you made me ask for stuff and make this a business transaction. That's weird. But instead, she's like, cool. So we have an agreement. Let's go.
I also wonder how much this has to do with reflecting their relationship developing, because how often does your wife finish your sentences for you, right? Or if you guys are discussing things and she sees something from a different perspective or a different light, she might actually say that, and then you have to stop and think about it. So in this moment, I wonder if he was saying it from a perspective that she wasn't considering, which,
and we don't know how much control she even has when he's talking to her. Is she still very much present and then letting him do that, or is she completely gone and blocked out? So that makes sense. We find out again the culprit behind all this is Ashenai. He made this brother disappear because Stella had said something about, like, I wish I didn't have a brother or something, and he overheard it and decided, hey, that sounds like fun.
It shows how dangerous Fae are.
Yeah, and to play a game, he takes the little brother and Elias and hides them somewhere and tells Chise she has to find them. And this is where he very much gives her the clue. Follow your nose, or use the beast inside. So she goes and turns into a bear using the very same pelt that he gave her, tracks them down, and they save him. This leads to Ashenai showing up, warning the little girl, words are powerful. He turns everything back to normal and leaves.
Yep. Well, he made a contract with them.
Yep.
And they fulfilled it. So he did too. Yep.
It even said how fun it was to lose.
Yeah, he did say that.
What I found interesting about this is Elias was so uncomfortable being alone with a child. And so he changed his face
to Chise's face.
Look like Chise. And he never answered properly why he changed it that way. He just wrote it off as, I had to deal with this bratty kid, and I don't know.
This is the kind of stuff I could see much smarter people than us, like college students, writing huge essays on of why did Elias choose the face he chose in every given situation? Why is he Lindell early on? Why is he Chise later? Why is he an unknown new face later? We'll get to that. Like, there's reasoning behind this man's decisions that we are not privy to.
Yep.
And again, it just builds into his persona of he is ancient, he is wise, but he is very immature.
Yes.
What really comes of this, though, is a friendship between Chise and Stella grows. And this episode ended weird because Stella's like, yeah, we'll be best friends. And Chise looks very uncomfortable. But nothing really comes from that. My thought was Chise's thinking, wow, I live a super dangerous life and this little kid's going to be coming around. That's probably a horrible idea.
Did she know how old she was yet?
No, not yet. That
she
was
thought she was her peer then.
But still, she could just be thinking, I'm letting a normal human into a very magical, dangerous lifestyle.
That's true.
But the reason I say that is that's the best thing I could come up with. I don't know what was wrong with Chise at the end of this episode. She looked very disturbed at Stella's friendship, but then afterwards, she's fine with the friendship. So I don't know what was going on here.
Just speaking from my own experience, I think friendship oftentimes can be daunting. Like, to get a new friend, to accept a friendship can be daunting. Because with friendship comes uncertainty and also a measure of obligation and responsibility, because you do have to be there for that friend. And since friendship was so new to her that, Alice, she's saying, I haven't made a friend in so long. I was wondering if she was just thinking, I've already got one friend. I don't know if I can deal with two right away. That was kind of what I was thinking was this is so new to you. Can you handle it? Can you figure out how to balance all of these people in your life yet?
Not only that, like, Alice kind of shares her experiences, and they're both privy to the magical world. This is her first friend.
Yeah, you're right.
Completely separated from the magical world. And, I think that probably gave rise for concern. I think you're right. I think you're fairly right, Troy, that she was unsure how to continue to protect this little human that didn't understand the world that she's from,
or even what they'd have in common.
Yeah.
Because thoughts on Stella, because she does kind of become a major plot point here.
It's called out many times that she's more mature than she is. Like, she acts more mature than she physically is. And I think it's actually really interesting that she acts as a sort of grounding point to reality for Chisei, and also as a way for her to gauge what her level of maturity should be as well, what would be expected of her, because we find out very quickly that Stella is considerably younger than her. How old is she? She's like
10.
Stella's 10 and
Stella's
Chisei
10.
is 15.
Yeah, yet Chisei mistakes her for a peer because of the way she acts. And so I think that I think it's going to be good for Chisei, and interesting to see how their relationship evolves as in, I mean, she's learning from a 10-year-old, and that's funny.
I have mixed feelings on Alice, but I think she's really...
You mean Stella?
Stella.
Yes, Stella. I think she's fairly integral to the way the storytelling ends. And I think it was a good decision to not only bring in someone so young, but someone from outside. Because this is the first person that becomes a staple that's completely separate from this magical world that they inhabit. I thought I thought the timing was good, and I think it's an integral point of the storytelling.
For me, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts about Stella. I didn't actually really like her that much, but she is integral to the story. I agree with that. It was also interesting to see her reaction to, Elias at his true appearance the first time she sees the skull face.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was cool.
We kind of asked who's seen Elias in his real form. You know, if you remember, he walked up to that church earlier, and so I've just always kind of been wondering, how much does Elias show himself off to the real world? And this kind of gave me an impression, not at all.
Not at all.
Humans, as they should. This is the reaction I wanted from Chisei in the first half. Oh my god, that's weird. Your face is weird.
Okay, and this is warranted. So Troy and I earlier, not today, but like a few days ago, we played an Eldritch horror game, and one of the main bad guys chasing us was this like
skull-faced
skull goat man, and it's like that is projected as a monster in most societies.
Absolutely, it's not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
In the next episode, Stella comes back almost the next day to start paying off her thing and hanging out with Chisei, and Elias freaks out watching these two interact. First, he leaves the room, and then after overhearing them, turns into a beast form and just stomps out the door and disappears. Chisei chases after, has to turn into a beast to catch up, gets to him, finds him in a mistletoe bush, which I thought was odd. And he pulls her underground into a cavern and then wraps her up in tentacles and starts strangling her. And he's not trying to hurt her, but more like, you're mine, you're mine, you're mine. I have you. Yeah. And Ruth, who we have hardly talked about, but he doesn't have a whole lot to do other than just...
He's very supporting in this.
He's very supporting, and every time there's a mistake, he feels like it's his fault. He does have some great comedic moments, of dog moments, but he doesn't. I didn't feel like that character grew at all in this.
No,
sorry, he's not really brought up. But Ruth chases after, gets help from the baby of the pregnant Yule woman, because they did such a good job celebrating Christmas.
They did everything right.
Helps him locate.
And did she threaten him as well? Like, we'll see about next time.
Yeah, don't mess up next year.
Yep.
Because whatever this is, she's going to turn into that dark pregnant woman that eats you or whatever it is if you don't do Yule right.
Yeah. Man, I think she probably gives birth to something that is less beneficial for the next year's fertility, I imagine. Yeah. Something more hostile.
Like I said, I loved it. Anyway,
yeah, it was great.
To get out, because nothing they're doing was working, Chise threatens to kill herself. Gets a knife, puts it to her throat, and that snaps Elias out.
To the point where he literally throws her up out of the ground and appears next to her. Yeah.
And she, explains to him that he's feeling jealousy, and she understands. I should also mention, quick side note, there's a show, I call him Joseph. What's his real name?
Cartifilus.
Finds Stella in the city. That's good. That's a little setup for later. I forgot that part.
All he does is tap her as he's walking by.
Right, but we know him.
We knew something bad was happening. Yep.
Chise convinces Elias to go home and sleep together, and I don't mean that in a pervy way.
No.
They are going to go share a bed.
I love this scene.
To calm him down. The next scene is, it's 4 days later. And Chise has to go to town because she has knocked him out with a lullaby that is actually a powerful sleeping spell. And we find out that Chise is supremely good at sleeping magic.
Yep. Yeah, I was actually wondering because it showed him, and the way he laid looked very uncomfortable. And I was thinking, why is he laying? Are they talking? And then you find out, I'm like, oh, he is going to have a kink. Oh my gosh. So bad.
With the way he can change his form and stuff, I don't know if that would matter.
Probably doesn't even have bones.
Well, he has bones. We see his ribs sometimes, right?
And we saw his hand, then it got eaten and regrew.
I guess that's true. The rib could just be his image of what he thinks that should look like.
Yeah.
Guys, just throwing this out there. I'm a fully I want to say confidently heterosexual man. So I can say that Angelica's husband David is one of the most attractive male anime characters I've ever seen in my life. That's a man, lady. That is a man.
He was a very manly man. He didn't have a beard though.
And for those who want us to grow our beards, I'm trying. we had a comment. That's for you, guy who keep commenting on our beards. This is as good as it gets. I really love this character, and I love what he brought to the story. I mentioned it last time when we talked about Angelica, that her having a daughter and having a life outside of this magic world and not just being a plot device really, I thought, was great world building. Yeah. And then now we meet her husband and how he's like, I'm not a magic guy. And his daughter is, and the way he explains, like, I'm going to die before them. And that's just the reality. It's my responsibility to live as long as I can for their sake, because they already have this horrible burden of long lives, of having to watch the people they love come and go from their lives. And that advice he gave to Chise, who is clearly sick from using magic again, and we know as a Sleighbeggy doesn't have a long lifespan ahead of her. Was just a scene that just really grabbed me. It wasn't super important, wasn't like super lore building, but this is the ebb and flow of this anime and how they make everything feel so natural and normal and
so important at the same time.
Right.
Like this, it's amazing how they were able to put world building lore into such a family moment. Like this whole scene screamed family, and this is the things that family has to deal with when they're gonna live millennia longer than me.
Yeah. Plus, I think it also like redirected some of her depression to somewhere positive, like anchoring her to Elias and saying, "Don't you want to live for him rather than die out of your personal loneliness and depression internally?" Not that he was saying this specifically to her, but I think that psychologically it was a nice way to redirect her inner turmoil into something positive.
I've heard that before, where maybe someone that's depressed gets an opportunity for something great in their lives, and they're like, well, I don't deserve it. Why should I go for this opportunity? I'm not good enough. And then someone comes along and says, okay, if that's what you believe, we can go with that. Instead of thinking about doing it for yourself, do it for the people that love you.
Yep.
And that can be just as not much, if not more powerful than the selfish desire, because then now it becomes altruistic. I don't think I said that right.
Altruistic. Close enough.
Altruistic, yeah. And also, loving for the people around you, even though it serves you as well. So,
exactly.
Great character to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I absolutely loved it. Basically, Gen gets the potion for waking him up, shoves it down his throat, gets him away.
Like, literally, just ha!
Yeah, that was crazy. It looked like it actually hurt too. It's just the way he woke up in shock.
I have a feeling she's still a little upset with him and kind of felt he deserved it. There was some intent behind that. Yeah. Before we get to the final thing, there's some notes I have about this episode. One, my favorite line, because I had complained about it in our last episode, was Ruth. Someone asked Ruth what he thinks they should do, and he says, "I think you both should try speaking more." And I just wanted to applaud Ruth. Like, thank you for calling it out. And I think it's him, or maybe it's Angelica, but someone calls out that their relationship has changed from a father-daughter to a mother-son. Yes. Which I thought was, we talked about that power dynamic switching, and that someone was calling it out in the anime. I thought was really well done.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. It made the relationship more real and believable.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we see some dragons getting kidnapped by poachers. Lindell saves them, but then Joseph interferes. It's kind of hard to tell what happened.
Yeah, he showed up with a teleportation vial and blinked everybody out.
Yeah, so he gets the baby dragons, and then we see him torturing baby dragons. Then we get an awesome scene with Renfred and his two alchemist buddies that are going to play into the story, Adolf and Tori.
I love that they're like, no, don't let him drink.
Don't let him drink. And I'm like, what's going to happen if he drinks? And the fact he turns into a crybaby was awesome. Thank you for that. Because Renfred's the guy who's missing an arm. He's got 3 scars on his face. We were introduced to him as almost a villain. He shot a guy in the back of the head. He has just been this hard man that has gone through this anime. And then he starts drinking and he starts crying. Yeah.
It took me a minute to remember what you guys were talking about. I was like, who's crying? Oh.
And I love how Adolf is like, no, we're not drinking. And Renfred's like, 1 drink. He's like, okay, 1 drink. And then Tori comes in and pours another drink. He's like, no! And Renfred drinks just immediately, no! My life is so hard.
And Elf's like, I'm out. He's like, I'm gone. And Tori's like, no, don't leave me. He's like, you did this. You have to deal with this for the next 4 hours.
So I'm putting all the 3 of these characters together for our discussion point, but what did you think of Renfred, Adolf, and Tori? Adolf is the one with the white hair. Tori is kind of the more cheeky one who's a little morally gray. And Renfred, of course, we know from the last series.
I didn't particularly like or dislike them. I felt they were more plot device than they were characters, unfortunately. I hope they get more screen time, because I think they could be interesting more than what they were presented.
There's a point in a little bit where Tori gets a bit more screen time, and it's very dubious what is being discussed. I was really concerned for Tori's life during that screen time. That didn't turn out to be the case. There's no reason to worry. But other than that, they, to me, exactly the same. They were just padding for the scenes, knowing that there are other characters that exist in the world, other faces was nice, but there was nothing that really stood out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna for me, I just really enjoyed seeing Alchemist, because they have been presented as a major part of this world, more numerous than the mages. And I'm very fascinated in how they kind of fit into this whole thing, because we've very much seen the mage world and these alchemists who are just kind of scratching at the surface of it and doing their own thing, but trying to keep up, right? And so it was really interesting to see them, especially I think Adolf is very interesting with the fact that he was a former mage apprentice who couldn't
cut it.
And that's a thing. And that, Lindell still cares about this guy, and looks out for him. I thought that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm going to hit fast forward a little bit in the story because basically Chise has a very weird dream where she sees Joseph in a phantom version of London. And I'm not quite sure what that is, and it's never fully explained.
I think it's an astral plane.
Yeah. It's just weird he didn't remember it. I think that was the part that kind of threw me. It's almost like a part of him is stuck out there.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole reaction in the whole situation was very bizarre. And that whenever you're dealing with him, you never know. He's very Jokerish almost, that you never know what's going to come at you next.
Yeah, I think it's because of all the different minds that are warring inside of him. He doesn't even really know what's going on. But I think she invaded his sleep, like his dream, in some kind of dream astral plane thing. If they are, like Jason was mentioning earlier, if it's more like a druid type of tradition, then it would actually make a lot of sense if she could step into someone's dream and walk through it. So it's a possibility.
Afterwards, basically, Lindell has got together these alchemist friends, and they've come to Elias for help, and they want to save the baby dragons that were kidnapped. They're going to be sold at auction. Chise comes up with a plan, contacts the guy who sold her off.
Great.
Loved
That was a
this.
great callback.
And there's a ton of stuff that happens when they get to this auction house. Chise gets paid for her own sale.
Mm-hmm.
She gets half the money from the sale. Which was interesting that it's been so long that they only just now oh yeah, by the way, I owe you millions of dollars.
Yeah, a year later.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how long it took for Elias' check to clear.
Yeah, because we still don't really know where that money came from anyway.
Uh-huh.
There's conversations had between and Elias and the alchemist. Elias is wearing a new face that no one's ever seen before. He has white hair and a girl voice.
Well,
or a very higher pitched voice.
They mention in the sub that it's a mixture of two faces. Did they mention it in the dub?
She just said, that's not Lindell's and it's not mine. That must be someone else. I wonder who that is.
Maybe I misunderstood it then. I got the impression that she was saying that it was a mix. It's not my face, it's not Lindell's. It looks like a mix, but I could have just interpreted it that way.
It was just really interesting to me because every time he changed his face, he kept his voice, and this time he didn't. At least in the English dub, he has a new voice when he speaks.
Yeah, he has. I think he has a new voice in the sub too.
Okay. And then he, like I said, he's talking with Renfred, and Alice is making comments. Just a lot of stuff goes down. But I'm going to skip to, they go to an auction. They're trying to buy this dragon. A new character shows up, whispers into Chise's ear. They make a deal. We're going to get to her later.
Little Miss Rule Breaker.
The dragon goes nuts, and we see that malice that we had seen before on the Cat Island. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's very similar to that.
Is that what that goo was?
Yeah, it was. That's what I took it as, because that's what they had called it before.
Okay, because I thought Cartophilus did something to the dragon.
Well, he had. He'd been purposely building him up to do this.
Well, I understood that malice to be a manifestation of Cartiphilus's corruption.
That could be it too, yeah.
Yeah, he corrupts it, and maybe the creature's own malice or rage or whatever causes it to manifest in this way. But yeah.
Okay.
What's really interesting is the baby dragon transformed into a giant monstrous dragon, and Elias, at least in the English dub, says he has reverted to a fairy tale form, which is almost like he turned into what people think dragons are instead of what he is.
So in the sub, they're a little clearer in the sub. In the sub, they say it's atavism, and atavism is when you have some kind of a genetic trait that maybe is considered vestigial today, but it remanifests in its full power. So breathing fire and having this appearance, this is all vestigial in the sense that it's not even vestigial really because it's not present in them. It's just in the genetic code but not manifesting physically. And now it suddenly is.
Okay. So the dragon starts burning down the auction house, going nuts. Chise starts crying hard. And so we had talked.
That's what you're talking about.
We had talked in our last episode that every time Chise interacts with someone, she gets to go into their memories and see their past. And we had talked about how there was never an explanation given, that it was just a logic thing that Jeremy, you had mentioned it, that it kind of had bugged you that we weren't given an explanation. I saw this in the fact that Chise is standing in a crowd of people and she's getting this dragon's thoughts into her, that she truly is an empathic sponge, that when she is around strong emotions, she will suck them up into her. She will suck your memories in. This is literally just something she does as a slave eggy. And like I said, in this anime, they never really call out and explain things very often.
I thought it was just because it's a fae creature and she has a strong connection to that.
No, she could, well, maybe, but she could like literally feel all its thoughts. She's like, it wants to go home. It's angry. It's scared. I can feel it. And everyone else in that row is just like, what's going on with Chise?
Yeah, I think it's I'm getting the image in my mind of like a whipping cable, right? And that's her, essentially, in my mind. What I see her as, you're right. I think in this instance, it could be described as sort of an empathic sponge, but I do see it oriented towards Fae. I don't recall any time that she had an empathic reaction to a human, but she does seem to have them toward Fae. So
that's true.
I think that it is a Slaybergy effect of, like, she is a conduit that is just right there as the queen, where any of them that she plugs into because they're intense enough. I think you've definitely got something there, but I don't know if it's necessarily like, in this case, I could see it as an empathic, but it was clearly telepathic previously because she could understand their communications
and see memories. And she does that later too. There's a point where she literally pins down the villain and is like, I'm going into your memories.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. Which implies kind of just like an overarching ability to just, she has so much power.
Right.
But it's uncontrolled that she just connects.
We had just called out before that it was weird that it kept happening to her without a reason. And when I saw this scene, I took it as there is a reason. Even if they're not saying it out loud and someone is explaining to us, there's definitely an actual reason this keeps happening to her.
I think you're right. I'm just glad that they didn't have her jump into anybody's mind the way they did before. I mean, not without cause. There's cause later that actually helps, but yeah.
That's fair.
Well, she mentions, I don't remember when it is, but she goes, "Oh, that's right, I'm Queen Bee."
Yeah, she does say that at some point.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was in this arc, but she does say it.
I'm trying to remember when it was, but
Dragon, flies out. They're trying to get Chise onto the back of it so she can absorb the excess magic, and then Elias will absorb the excess magic from her. They just need to use her as a conduit. They go flying on its back, trying to stay on, and Elias takes flame burst right to the face and goes.
That
flying.
Was awesome. That was great.
So Chise decides to do something, and she has this new bracelet that's like her ring, right? That dampened her magic, and it was like a super dampener. She throws it off, touches the dragon, absorbs his magic, and causes it to crash into the river. Ruth pulls them out, and when he does, her arm is now malformed. I thought it was fused to the dragon at first, but
I did too.
I guess that's not the case. But it very much is similar to the dragon's body. When she wakes up, it's explained to her, you have been cursed by the dragon. Your new arm will continue to grow and fester, and it will eventually kill you. And she's like, how long? And they're like, we have literally no idea.
Mm-hmm. I thought this was very impulsive and irresponsible of her to leap to this dragon's aid. Of course,
it was within character.
It was within character, but I thought, man, she really didn't take to heart what that guy said to her, Angelica's, or whatever her name is, her husband. She did not take that to heart because, once again, she is ready to throw her life away for just this baby dragon now.
Yeah, Elias calls her out later. He calls her on it. He's like, you're just so willing to be the self-sacrifice, and it's kind of BS.
Yeah.
But
you're right. It's within character.
Disagreed, and I forget what she said.
Oh, I think I know what she said. We don't trade lives. I think that's what she said.
Nope, that is definitely Avengers. You're a horrible person. I walked right into that.
Yeah, you did.
Man. And I'm just sitting here clueless.
You won't be for long, I'm sure.
I know I wrote it down, and it's when they're sitting in the countryside. I just wrote she doesn't agree with him. She
doesn't really need a reason. She has feelings.
She said something about like, when I save them, it gives me purpose in my life and something like that. But I do not remember what she said. I do remember Elias calls her out on it. She disagrees. At this time, I thought this anime was transitioning to the stages of grief and accepting death. Because I got the feeling that this very much felt like she's a cancer patient. Like, you're going to die. You have something in you that cannot be cured, and it's going to slowly kill you. And that's something you have to accept. And especially when Elias is going to go off the rails here, that he was our presentation of the stages of grief. Now, that is not actually what ends up happening. I tried to sit down with the stages and put it all
plot
together.
It out.
Yeah, I couldn't. But that was the impression I was getting, especially at this scene.
Oh man! So this was so heart-wrenching. This scene where they're standing around her bed and she's just like, what's one more curse? And Elias just loses his...
He leaves. He's like, no, can't.
Yeah, he's like, I can't do this. And I'm just going, this is so freaking realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine two people that love each other so much, and and she's a cancer patient, and she goes, oh yeah, oh well, one more trial to go through after going through all of this depression and suicidalness. And, the better half got, this is too much.
Yeah.
I've known beautifully done scene.
I've known married couples and one got cancer and died, and disagreements within the relationship about how hard to fight and when to give in and how that does form. And it's something that couples have to deal with. And so, you're right. This was spot on realistic of someone who's accepting, someone who's not. And then she does assert let's fight it, and let's fight it together.
Yeah.
And then we meet our new character, who was the secret other character at the auction, Mariel Goatherder, a magic witch who wants to help, but not really. She's actually there to help herself. And she's offering Chise a chance to join the witch coven, which Elias at first is like, no, because again, don't take away my thing.
Also, they're so different. I think it's another, I don't trust those guys. I don't want to be a part of that. They're not as good as mages kind of thing.
Yeah, it was interesting that there is another magic group in this world too. They're like, oh, by the way, there's also witches.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was enthralled with. I was just like, yes, more world building.
Yes, exactly.
Stella visits. Find out it's Chise's birthday, which I felt was a little convenient for the scene.
But it wasn't though, was it? Was it Chise's birthday that
day? She came over to invite Chise to her birthday party. And she goes, Chise, when's your birthday? And Chise goes, oh, I guess it's today. At least that's what she said in the English dub.
Yeah.
And then
I guess that means she's 16 at this point.
The reason she said that
still not legal
is because Stella then says, next year we'll make sure to throw you a birthday party, and she's dying, and Stella doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So what's really going on is Chise realizing that she only has such a limited time left, and that there are things she wants to do in the future that could be off the table now, and just the reality of her situation. This also kind of does the same for Elias, and he agrees to go to the witch coven, which does not go great.
Actually, I was kind of happy how this turned out, and not because they can't help her, but just kind of the emotional roller coaster this puts both of them on. It is such a good show.
I really like the fact that they couldn't help her because I thought it made a great story beat. So far, problem solution has been pretty consistent. This kind of threw that beat off.
Would have been a little convenient if they got to the witch and they're like, yeah, you totally just need to drink this mushroom soup and you're good.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that was coming.
Because she mentions, witches were curses are a thing.
Yes.
That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
You should totally come to the coven because we know curses.
And just like you said, this was another reason I thought this is going to be about accepting your death and going through the stages of grief, because they weren't doing problem solution, and they kind of had been up to this point. I was like, oh, they're going to go to these witches and they're going to have they don't have the cure. Oh, they're going to go down this road.
Yep.
and they don't fully, but yeah, definitely these a couple episodes I thought they were. We meet another character who's the head of the witch coven, who's like half tree. She tried to push a curse into a tree and instead fused to the tree.
Yeah, oops.
That's great.
Not bad.
Yep. Tree was not happy.
That's when when they leave, this Mariall gives Elias a note and whispers something, and it basically says a life for a life, right? To save her, you're gonna have to sacrifice someone. And
Philosopher's Stone, baby.
Elias goes on a quest. He starts searching for stuff and goes to the college. He talks to the alchemist. What's really interesting is that we get no dialogue. We see them having a discussion and chatting, coming up with whatever plan he's got, and we don't get to hear a single word of it. And it's so ominous of, oh, Elias, how far are you going to go? And what are you going to do?
Have we seen the note yet? Because I don't recall seeing the note at this point.
Yes, because I had written it down by that point. Before he goes to the college, I wrote down life for a life. So
I thought he was going to kill Tori. That's what I thought. I was like, this is why Tori was annoying.
No, I got such bad vibes. And again, the realism, how far your partner goes to keep the person that they love alive, was so mirror. And it's so funny because you take this outlandish, magical world and you're putting just real life problems in their face. And you've got this person that is just not used to a personal relationship and caring so deeply about somebody. How far will they go? And yeah, these whole conversations, it's like, Elias.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to sacrificing the dragon. I thought for sure, because they even say something like, as long as the dragon lives, that curse will live. And I'm like,
yeah.
I remember hearing that,
thinking killing the dragon.
Yeah, I thought Elias was just going to go out there and murder it.
Yeah, pretty simple fix.
That probably would have worked, but Elias has a problem with another character in this anime. He goes out of his way to deal with them. He kidnaps Stella because he's jealous of this 10-year-old girl, so why should he let her live?
I absolutely loved that decision. Like, the way that they handled that.
Please clarify that you don't love the idea of sacrifice. A 10-year-old, you love the idea that a character would go to that dark place.
I love the idea that this character specifically did because it fit his level of immaturity.
Yes.
When somebody gets jealous or covetous, and really that's what possessivity is, right? Is that you're covetous of time, you're covetous of attention. That is the extreme of how you deal with that covetous emotional, response. And so seeing him do this sold for me even more just how little experience he's had with emotion and how easy it is for him to be like, well, I've lived hundreds of years. These muggles, right? That's the word from earlier. They don't live very long. They're no different than animals. They have these short lifespans. They're not important. They don't know magic. They're not half fae. I can sacrifice one of them, and I really don't like this one. It sold that character. I really like that.
What really fell out of place was that Ruth went along with it.
Yeah, that was... I don't know if it fell out of place, but it was surprising because of his connection to Chisei. I can see how it would happen because of the desperation.
Out of place is the wrong place. I just really thought the Ruth, I thought I understood, and there's nothing that presented he wouldn't go the other way. It would be he'd do what Chisei wants to do.
Oh, no. At least that's not the impression I got. Okay. Yeah, well, I got the impression that Ruth is there to protect Chisei.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what Chisei wants.
And actually, Chisei gave him buy-off to do this earlier because she said, hey, if I ever do something that you think I don't want to do, stop me or help me.
Yeah, from the running away thing, right?
Yeah. I forgot about that.
She gave him permission. I could see him twisting that and giving him permission to do this because he was apprehensive, but he wants
justified it.
To live. Yeah,
yeah. I guess for me, he also Elias eventually tries to defend himself. when this is all found out. He's like, hey, I was doing it for these, and Ruth is just like, I suck.
Yeah, right.
It was so dog. I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm in so much trouble.
When they return, they use a spell to knock out Chise and then prepare the sacrifice. And while she's asleep, she sees Nevin, the dragon that became her wand, which was really interesting because he gives her advice and then is like, yeah, I'm not really Nevin. You realize you're just talking to yourself. This is your advice to yourself. You already know this.
I know that you said you liked this part of it, Jason. I don't like that Nevin was a construct. I liked all the other parts of the construct idea, but I do not like that Nevin was, because there was this element of fantasy and of connection and of, her wand is part of Nevin's tree.
It specify a splinter of Nevin is inside you, but the advice Nevin is giving is from yourself.
See, that's what I don't like. I think, like, what good is a splinter if it's not what's giving you the advice? If you're just giving yourself advice, then the splinter is of no value or point. So I like the idea that the splinter is actually what's giving the advice and she's just translating it. I don't like
maybe
the direction they went.
Finds the advice you need.
or provides the inspiration. I like the reason I liked it so much is because it was her realization that, hey, I am strong enough to do this. I am strong enough to listen to my own advice. And my own advice is worth listening to and acting on. And just, again, that growth from I'm going to jump off a building and sell myself at an auction to I'm not only worth it, but I'm not going to let someone die in my place. And just this whole character growth is just so
yeah. So I think it's like, because everything is so high fantasy with the mages, it was really cool to think that he could live on inside her mind. I was sad that that's gone,
or at least just a piece of him, right? Because they made such a strong magical connection.
To be fair, though, it would kind of go against the dragon thing of if there was a way to live on, because they were totally okay with going and being gone, and that was very much their thing. So it would kind of go against what Nevin was all about if he had found a way to linger on forever.
Yeah,
You're right.
I can still see your point. I don't.
Yeah, it's that wand thing. Like, the wand breaks the rule of Nevin dying. That kind of thing.
Technically, the tree that the wand came from killed him.
Well, I mean, it sort of was, but then there's the argument of magical stuff about him
trying to move us on.
Humming the tree. Yeah.
Hey, which one of us has a bedtime tonight? All right, let's go. A lot of stuff actually happens like in a really short amount of time. So Stella wakes up and we realize it's actually Joseph who has taken over her body. Chise runs in, sees what's going on. Joseph pretends to be Stella. It's like, oh, I'm so scared. I'm running away. Chise punches Elias in the face. Sure.
Real quick sidebar. I love this scene for one specific reason. Even though it was Joseph that ran into her arms, I don't think Chise cared, because Elias was about to warn Chise, hey, that's Joseph in your arms. And I think in other anime, that might have just hand-waved this whole, I'm trying to sacrifice a human on your behalf. And they didn't let him get away with it, and I really appreciated that.
I also like that he stuck with his decision. He's like, whoa. No, I'm totally sacrificing this kid. I'm saving you. Why this kid? Because I don't like her.
And I like you.
I don't like the way you look at her. So it was something like that. Like, I don't like the way you are together. It makes me not feel good. So this is totally okay. And then she literally, it wasn't. I like that Elias does just not see the moral quandary of what he's doing.
He had no guilt.
He very much is like, this is just what I need to do to save my wife.
Yeah. He had no guilt. And that means that for him, it was not a morally wrong act, even though in the greater sense, it was a morally wrong act.
Right.
That's great.
And then when Chise chases after Stella, she realizes very quickly that this is Joseph, and he offers her a deal. And she takes it, leaving Elias and Ruth behind. oh man, then we have the whole tear out my eyeball, tear out your eyeball, and swap eyeballs.
This was so great because it was so different than anything they had done.
So let me set it up. Let me set it up before we discuss it. Give me 1 sec. Joseph wants to take her arm, which is going to kill her, and put it on him, so he'll die. He wants to give her his arm so that she will become immortal.
He doesn't have a left arm. He can't give her his arm.
But he wants to give her a part of him. He did say that, like, I'll give you a part of me. It was more than just that, because that was the eye thing is the test.
The eye was the test, but they never got to the point of discussing what he'd give in exchange. So
you're right, because they do eventually.
The only thing.
She keeps the eye, and that is the part of her that will help her live longer.
But he does have the arm.
No, he's missing his left arm, and that's the arm that
it's not attached, but he has it. Remember when he disappeared, when he lost his arm?
You think he could attach that to someone else, but it won't attach to him?
But that wasn't his left arm, that was Renford's left arm.
Yeah, and it wouldn't attach to him, which would mean if it was rejected by him, it's no longer him, wouldn't serve.
But
I didn't realize that was Renford.
Almost none of his parts are him anymore. We're getting into the weeds.
Yeah, well, it's the acceptance, but go on.
Okay. So to make sure that they can properly transfer body parts, he rips out his eye and is like, hey, give me yours.
Yeah.
I love the look on his face, like, oh, this isn't so bad, as he's bleeding from an eye socket.
Again, there was a slight twinge in me of Chise going along with things that she should be reacting more to. This is like the first time in this whole second half I hit it, but I was like, man, if someone tells me they're going to rip out my eye physically, I'm at least saying something. I'm having a reaction. She just kind of lays down and lets it happen. And I guess she's trying to save her life, but she didn't even ask, like, is there an anesthetic? Is there another way? Do we have to do it this? Anything at all?
And then she just cuts black and she's screaming.
She again, it's almost reverting to an old Chise who is giving away her power, what is it called?
I know what you're saying.
Presence? It's not presence, but it's like your ability.
Her ability to make decisions. And
it's your
agency.
Her
agency.
Yeah, she's giving away her agency. Thank you so much. She's giving away her agency again and kind of reverting back to an old Chise. And he does. He rips out her eyeball and then he swaps their eyeballs. And I was like, they would not go that far. And then they did go that far. And oh my God.
Okay, I want to say something about irises. In iridology, it's actually really interesting. One of the things that is important is when areas are dark, they're areas that are not getting blood flow. And so they're essentially receiving less nutrient, functioning more poorly. So if you looked at his eye when he gave it to her, and I always look for these things in anime art because it's got to be there because of trying to express something more than just how the character's acting. Everything except the very bottom was just pure black. And that is actually a sign in iridology if the top is really dark of mental illness, mental problems, because the brain's not getting blood flow. So I love that one of her eyes was bright all over and green and just everything supposedly functioning great. The world glows and glitters. Even he makes the comment. And then the other eye is like this insane eye that has just this little tiny bit of bluish white at the very bottom and no other color but black. It's really cool.
Well, but eyes can't just be swapped. This keeps happening in animes.
Magic.
Animes, there was another anime they did that where they just started. Naruto does it all the time. Yeah, they pull out their eyes and swap them into each other's bodies, and I'm like,
guys, it doesn't work that way.
I don't understand how the optical nerve works.
Eyeball ninjutsu.
But basically, what mostly happens in this episode is the big flashback of Chise's real past. Happy times with her family. Does anyone have any theories about why her father left? The father wakes up one night to make the baby a bottle, sees a spirit outside, grabs the baby, packs up, and walks out the door saying, I'll be back, and never comes back.
I think it's a contract. I think that the reason why he was capable of even fighting off and protecting the family from other creatures was because of some contract that he made. Because they're not having a good time fighting these creatures off, but he seems okay doing it. I mean, there's one time where we see the mom actually deal with one of them. And I think that creature may be the one he made a contract with, and the contract's time was up.
And another Faye does mention without that man around, he was protecting them, and now they're defenseless.
It felt like just because of his reaction and the way he woke up, it felt like it was his breaking point. Like, I'm done with this life. I can't do this anymore.
It seems weird that he would take the boy and run.
I felt it was like, if I don't get this baby out of here, it's going, like, this is my only option. He just didn't seem like a guy who was going to abandon, and he didn't seem at that breaking point to me.
Okay.
But it's not explained.
No, not at all.
And I imagine it's a season 2 plot point.
But this is all induced memory from Cartaphilus, like, trying to upset her to make the dragon curse go faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he just wants her in misery because he says, "I hate you."
Well, he hates everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, her arm does pulse, though, when she gets more upset. But also, a fragment of him is inside here that she meets. And he's like, I'm like the original fragment, or fragment of the original that's left. And he's like, don't touch me. You're not ready for me. And but maybe someday. So she keeps living through her life. She sees her mother trying to support a child, trying to protect a child that is being literally hunted by evil spirits all the time.
But she's a slay baby as well, so she's weak, right?
They said she's also weak. They said she's also weak, which I interpreted as she's also a slay baby.
Mm-hmm.
There was one scene that she starts crying out, like, "Mommy, help, it hurts." And, like, you turn around and here's this...
There's, like, a monster on her arm.
Right? Just, like, chewing on her arm.
So when she reaches her breaking point, a voice whispers to her, "Wouldn't it be better without Cheesy?" Now, do you guys take that as mental illness or a fae getting, effing with her?
I wasn't sure how to...
Because it was a red-haired...
It was her.
Yeah.
It was an image of herself.
Whispering, you would be better off if Cheesy wasn't here. And at first she's like, that's crazy. And then she is obviously going crazy. And it's like, but it's true. Goes to strangle her daughter. Realize, before it's finally too late, it does go way farther than I thought it would. And it's, again, like she said, she's saying, I should have never had you. I should have never had you. Realizes what she's done. Jumps out the window. Kills herself.
So I took this to be similar to postpartum disease, but far delayed. Where the mother is essentially, saying, for the protection of the baby, I have to kill it, and in this case, I could see someone justifying and twisting logic internally because she has never once shown any sign of anything but protecting the girl.
Right. If you're that broken, you can commit yourself to something.
Yeah. And so I could see her actually seeing, choking her to death as a way to put her out of the misery that was going to be the rest of her life.
Yeah, I had that thought too. The baby blues and postpartum depression and stuff that very real things, and I kind of had similar thoughts.
But I mean, it is entirely possible that it's a fae, and I kind of would like to see them go that route. Although it does hit harder in the emotional spectrum of this show because of the things it chooses to use as themes. The postpartum depression concept really fits the other themes well as an emotional 1-2 punch.
Now, in this memory, a phantom version of the mother shows up and starts trying to strangle the real Chise, who then rejects her. And I really liked her words. So she kind of faces her version of her mother that she's built up in her head, because she points out, like, I didn't even remember that we had good memories. Everything just kind of got blocked out by the horrible tragic event. And so she tells this version of her mother, like, look, I can't forgive you for what you did, but I can move past it, and I can continue on with my life and find happiness despite it. And rejects her, and then pops out of that world as she grabs the fragment guy, then pops out and attacks Joseph. So now she has his immortality, which I assume is the accepting of the transplant is really what that was.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I thought this was one of the best interpretations of fighting inner demons I've ever seen. Like, she's like, I can't forgive you, but thank you for not killing me, allowing me to live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was hard-hitting scene for me.
Yeah. This was the construct that I really liked, because she actually recognized, once she understood the context and remembered why her mother did what she did, because all she remembered was that her mother choked her. once she remembered why and she saw the good things her mother did, she realized, oh man, that's not who my mom was.
Yeah.
That was cool.
So we're gonna again some fast forwarding through these episodes. So call out things you remember if they were important to call out. So first off, we see Elias in a monstrous form. He gets visited by Titania, Spriggan, and Oberon, who are like, they're like, look, we'll totally help you find her if you totally come live with us. And he's like, no, that is not what Chise wants. I'm not going to do that. And then Titania's like, fine, I'll help you anyway.
Yeah.
Well, he's in monstrous form because he's in grief.
Yeah.
Like,
he's losing it.
He's wandering the woods and just.
And giant Spriggan comes and steps on him and pins him down. It's like, get over yourself. You're at least part Fae and you need to represent.
I could love, even in his distraught state, even in this really dire straits, she's just like, yeah, but you could live with us forever.
Yeah.
It was interesting that this wasn't the real Titania. This was one of her branches that she's able to make clones of herself. Because
much younger.
If
much
you remember, yeah.
Exactly.
And then we see Chise. So they're searching for Chise, and then Chise goes into Joseph's memories, sees that Cartophilus and Joseph were actually separate people. Joseph was trying to take care of this cursed man, could not help him, and then eventually kind of lost his mind and fused with him.
Mm-hmm. Loneliness again.
Yeah. And then, because he wanted, like, if I help you, you'll help me, but you're not getting better, so no one's ever going to help me, and my life sucks.
I don't have any friends.
Right.
Yeah, everybody hates me.
So they fuse, and then it shows them, like, going around and, like, snatching up body parts and attaching them to each other.
Well, to itself.
To himself, right.
Yeah.
And there's just the theme that the string that keeps coming up is begging for help and suffering. Like, they're always in pain and they always want someone to help them. Yeah, it always hurts. Please help me.
I thought this was actually really odd too, because like seeing how Cartophilus just laid in the streets, he didn't take Joseph's body parts to make them his own. Joseph showed up and Joseph started taking care of him, and Cartophilus stayed there for however long he was in that hut, letting Joseph take care of him. It wasn't until Joseph lost it and Joseph introduced and combined with Cartophilus completely.
It's almost like Joseph is the source of his mental illness.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
Then a big battle happens, and like all these characters come rushing in to help. Elias shows up. Really interesting to me was that the blue flame little imp guy shows up to do magic, and he uses Alice as a battery.
Let me use your inner fire.
Which is like, wait, could she be a mage?
That's what I'm thinking too.
Or at least the ability to. I loved this scene where they just all like. She's like, oh, found you. And then they just all appear, and here's Elias in his like monster form. That was one of the coolest scenes in this entire thing.
Also, to Tanya being like, Chise, come into the fairy world, I'll save you. And then Chise's like, no. And she's like, fine, then I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But once stuff settles down, Chise basically runs after Joseph, who is escaping, and runs into Mariol again, and who has been forced by the head of her coven to make things right, because they had wanted actually help from Chise. They wanted dragon blood for the curse.
Mm-hmm.
And the head of that coven has kind of realized that all this kind of happened because of Mariol.
Yep.
And so she helps. Chise ends up riding on Elias, chasing after Joseph, and she makes him make a promise, and then they reach Joseph, and she fights him. They battle until
No, she was riding on Mariol as a bull, and Elias was in her shadow, right?
Oh, you're right. And Ruth was running beside her, and Elias got into the shadow. That's right, because I was wondering.
They get to the fountain that we see at the end.
They get to the fountain from the end credits. They fight. Ash and I shows up and also starts fighting. There's a giant pile of centipedes. Apparently, Ruth can breathe fire. Which I think we knew. Did we know that?
No.
I don't remember him doing it before.
Okay. She gets stabbed by Joseph, and he says something like, "You can't beat me as long as we're part of each other. So she rips out her eye from him. And then they're entangled together by vines from Elias, who's keeping his promise. And she sings a magic lullaby to him.
Ruth rips the eye out. Yeah, go ahead.
Cartaphilus runs her through with something.
His hand, I think.
Is it his hand?
Yeah, because in the first time they met Cartaphilus out there, when Elias was yelling at him and gonna attack him, Cartaphilus actually turned one of his hands into a big nasty claw just like hers and cupped his face. And I think that's the same hand. He also used it when fighting her in the room.
Right, he did. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, his arms literally through her chest while she's like grabbing onto him and singing to him.
Somehow she still sang.
So basically, her method of dealing with this villain is to induce a coma.
If he's not killable, it's a pretty good idea.
But it also helps him because that's something you do to people who are in a ton of pain to help them get through. You induce a coma. Yep. That's actually a medical practice. So I thought that was actually creative, especially since we know sleep magic is her thing. She, of course, is very injured and hurt, and Elias carries his wife away. When there was a really interesting scene while she's asleep of the fragment of Joseph coming up to her, and he's like, hey, so this is the immortality that is now within her. And he's like, I talked to the dragon curse. I promised him he could kill you someday, long into the future. And he goes, that's odd. That's very much normal human life.
Yes.
So basically she has a curse that will kill her, but it'll take years and she'll go into old age and die a normal death.
Yep.
Because the immortality will keep it at bay until she's old. Which it was clever, but also like, so you found a way to reset it to 0 without just wiping the slate clean.
And yet she still doesn't have the immortality Elias has.
Right. It's almost like she piles enough curses on that they counteract each other.
Yep. Yep. Bring her to neutral.
I did like how she kept a scarred arm from it.
Yes. Yeah, because I noticed she was wearing a glove earlier, and then she has this long black arm. It's not monstrous. It's just black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is interesting because we see Elias take his gloves off for the first time.
He has black hands too.
He has black hands too.
You think he's just a bundle of curses too?
Probably. I mean, if he's a half breed, who knows what went into creating him?
Yeah. Well, and you can start as a human and turn into a fae. We now know that is something that's true. Elias could have still started as a human and become fae. And that's why he's a half. There is someone that does say half breed in this section because we talked about that last time,
right?
About what his portions were, just in the English dub though. So, grain of salt. So their life goes on. I really love when she wakes up and they argue. Like get right into the issue. And I'm like, there you go. That's what you do. You have an issue, you get to the work and you take care of it.
Yep.
So I really like that. Especially that Elias was still defending himself.
Don't give up.
What's your problem?
That's right. Fight for it, man.
She goes on, visits, basically she kind of does the tour, visits characters. We see everyone's life just kind of return to normal. And then we get a beautiful scene of them having a wedding almost.
The one thing I had a big problem with, especially if she was going to get the immortality that Cartaphilus bestowed upon her. In this ending scene, if you look, she's got both her eyes. And I understand she took her eye from Cartaphilus, but...
No, it healed. When she was in the dream state, and that fragment came and told her... When she started walking to the light to leave that reality or back to wake up, her eyes switched back to green.
I don't like that. I think they should have left it the blue.
They should have left it. That that her arm was scarred. I think it would have been really, really cool, especially going into a second season, if she had Joseph's eye as a consequence of this interaction, because the whole eye exchange could probably only be done by a master alchemist like Joseph. I don't think she would have been able to do it.
It looked really technical and skilled. That was sarcasm.
Well, if you looked at his monsters he created.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. I love it because it's yet another mark. It's another scar. And to remove it is just, it kind of takes away her character, her uniqueness.
Felt cheap. That would probably be my one criticism of this ending scene. I was like, wait, why does she have 2 green eyes? No.
Okay, so the very ending scene, Elias finds her in the forest. She's in a wedding dress, has a veil that she got from Angelica. The dress was for her birthday.
Everybody's conspiring to get her married.
She has rings for them, and she's like, these are magic rings, so we can detect each other. But they also happen to be on our wedding fingers.
Oh, she deliberately tells him, like, give me your left hand. He gives her his right hand. No, I said your left hand. And then she puts it, he's like, isn't that the wedding ring finger? Shut up.
No, you shut up.
Right?
Basically, they establish their commitment to each other.
Go to Coeur d'Alene.
Carries her home, and she's like, should you still be my teacher? He's like, yeah. And so she's like, good, because it's kind of hard to call you the other thing. She still can't call him her husband, but that to me is her saying, yes, we are married now. That's how this ends. Very romantic. But yeah, that was that. So any other thoughts on the wedding?
Yeah.
I thought it was a nice ending.
You could add some more flowers, and Spriggan could have been there as like the groom, as the witness.
I think it really fit them having nobody present.
Yeah, but I needed some more Spriggan in this.
You just wanted Spriggan.
Maybe Spriggan just needs his own anime. The Adventures of Spriggan.
He could. They should do a live action one and have him be Peter Dinklage.
Oh, so the ending.
Hey, he's awesome.
He is.
Is awesome, and I know why you're bringing him up, and you need to not do that right now.
So wait, didn't when did her going to deliver water happen? Is it before or after the wedding?
To deliver water? Oh, to deliver water? Who did she deliver it to?
Troy, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Nope.
In the hole in the ground.
Let's go to final reviews.
Her prisoner.
Oh, you're right. That is actually important. I thought you were making a joke.
Shoot, I know what you're talking about. Cartiphilus.
So yes. Yeah, when she left, one of the things she did, she checked on Cartiphilus, who is sleeping in a bottom of a well, and she brings him water, which I thought maybe that's sleeping potion too. Maybe she's bringing him sleeping potion to help knock him back out.
Because he gives it to him. Who? That's what I was wondering. I was like, wait a minute.
And I think she knows because she came down and the cup on the thing was empty.
But I was wondering if that was Ash and I because he's there too.
So Ash and I does show up and he talks to Joseph. Joseph wakes up and he's like, "What? Are you just gonna sleep this through?" And Joseph's like, "Yeah, I hate her. I'm going back to bed."
And then in the tub, he literally says, "I do not want to see her face."
And Ash just awesome. Says, "This is boring. I'm leaving." That's how we leave our two villains.
But
so
when he opens the one eye, you can see it's a socket. It's empty.
Yeah.
They didn't give him back his other eye.
Okay, so now let's go to final review. We need to wrap this up.
5.
Yeah.
Why even ask?
And that is also my score for like the combined as well. Like,
okay. Yeah. Yep. So I give the second half a 5, and the whole thing combined, I give a 4. Can't quite reach a 5 for me. I really wanted to see, like at the beginning of the last episode, Elias is laying in his bed, or he's like in the bed, and he's holding a picture of her, and he's talking about her in the past tense and saying, she's the only one that understood me. She's the only one that cared about me. I love her, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And I thought, oh man, is she going to die? This would be so good. And if she had died in the line of defeating Cartiphilus and it wasn't enough, like at that point where he ran her through with his hand, if that was it for her, I would have been way more pleased with this. And I think it would have been a really good story because the Ancient Magus remembers her, but he lives on, and it forever changed her. It changed him. It would have been still really, really good. But knowing that there's a second season that they're talking about, it's okay. I think that would have been a 5 for the whole series for me. I would have been totally fine with everything they did in the first half that I didn't like if it ended that way.
Okay. 4 for me. Only because there is something missing from this anime. I realized when I was watching it, and I still think it's a really good anime. It has a lot of great things. The thing I'm missing, I never felt hype. I never got excited about a scene. No battle. No, I was never like throwing up my arms like, yes, they did it. And that's okay. But the perfect anime to me can also include that. And honestly, for like going forward, everything's judged by the bar of Made in Abyss.
Yeah.
Made in Abyss is something with a lot of emotional and psychological and lore and world building.
And ReZero.
There are scenes that got me hype too, so it can be done.
What about Spriggan putting Elias down?
I liked it, but it wasn't. It's not 1,000,000% smash. You know,
yeah,
it's not the same. So only a 4 for me, but I think this is a really great anime. Yeah. It's a very personal preference, so take that with what it's worth. Okay. Our next anime is going to be Overlord. The first season?
Yes, the first season of Overlord.
13 episodes, and it'll be awesome. And that bell means we're out of time. So if you want to give us a comment, you can reach us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast. You can leave us an email, theanimebakaclub@gmail.com, or leave us a comment wherever you found this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We are working on growing the beers. I swear to you, I am. And next week, another episode of Ghost Stories. So that's the only reason you watch us. It's finally here. I do want to say, I think because we talked about depression and so much, and I said like, hey, I think watching this anime could really help. It is not a true help. You know, talk to someone, talk to a doctor, talk to a therapist.
Well, yeah.
if you are having problems with depression, please reach out to someone and get some help. Other than that, thank you so much for listening.
Have a great night or day, whatever it is.
Thanks for listening.
Sayonara.